Good morning. Welcome to the show. Today is Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. I'm your host, rdizzle408. Before we begin, a few rules. We are open to all opinions shared on our show in a civil and polite manner. We want a fun chat where we learn from one another. Yes, folks, welcome to America's Talk Show. And it seems like Mark was talking about few things. China, some updates on China. Talks about LA is the police chief really okay. But then there was that DNC video that I believe Joshua had some comments on. If you wouldn't mind sharing those, Joshua.
Yeah, thanks. It's interesting. It's interesting that the DNC itself officially is doing this, because I don't think there's an RNC analog. But it again seems like the Democrats are missing the point. Hashtag prove me wrong, because it's not about platform as much as it is about content. So if you've got the officially licensed content of the DNC, it's still going to be the officially licensed content of the DNC, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or Zoom or TikTok or whatever. It's still going to be the talking points of the DNC. And that's the thing that I don't think they're quite understanding. The Republicans don't have, or conservatives, right? Let's call it like conservative media. Conservative media, I don't think, has an overarching hierarchical message behind it. And there's a vast amount of diversity within conservative media content. I suppose you have that with liberal media as well, because you want to talk about like maybe the Young Turks, you want to talk about Crystal and Sagar with Breaking Points, but then all the like officially licensed DNC products, like and now this new thing, I think it's going to fall flat. I think it's going to fizzle.
Joshua, if you could, because Mark had a guest on kind of summarizing, I think, Trump's agenda. I believe the guest was former Democrat. What would you say? I mean, you're talking about the Democratic Party, kind of the fundamental. What are their policies? So what would you say one, two, or three are that the Democrats are running on?
That's two different questions, and it's going to be two different things. Like, what are the Democrats running on versus what are their policy positions? They're not running on the policy positions. They're running on Trump is a dictator and Trump is an authoritarian. You saw it from Gavin Newsom just recently. Yes, absolutely. Dean from Ohio, Trump bad. They haven't. They didn't get the memo that Orange Man bad isn't a winning message. Now, from a policy perspective, look, I think their policy perspective right now, their top priorities, I think they're still universal health care. I think they're open open borders, right? Open-ish borders. And if I had to pick a third, just because we like top three things rather than top two things, if I had to pick a third, I would say um, honestly, I would say sort of, you know, anti, anti-Israel, pro-Ukraine sort of things. Now,
Texas.
honestly, I don't even think, I don't even think climate change uh, is in their top three anymore.
And this
Certainly
is
not like it used to be.
if you okay. Here's another thing I think that brings out some insight. So if you could name your top two favorite Republicans, let's say the oldest, like you can go way back to the first, Lincoln, or then the current. What would those be that were Republican?
My top two favorite Republicans would be Ulysses S. Grant, number one. Can I give a blurb as to why?
Sure.
Ulysses S. Grant created the Department of Justice for the sole purpose of destroying the Ku Klux Klan in the South. Ulysses S. Grant wanted to continue, um, uh, the Union occupation of the South. Um, and that would have been a really good thing, because I feel like that would have really curtailed the rise of the KKK, as well as the massacres for Southern Black folks that happened post Civil War, and it would have led to less. I don't know. Hard to speculate what it would have led to, but I think it was a good idea. Second favorite is Dwight Eisenhower, because he saved the world twice. Once from Nazis as the Supreme Allied Commander in World War II, and once again from nuclear war, when all of his advisors, his military advisors, wanted to use nukes in Korea, and he was like, nope.
And because we love our Democratic Party friends and want a viable opposition, now please do the same for the Democratic Party, the top two, oldest and most recent.
Top two oldest and most recent Democrats. My favorite Democrats. Clinton, probably, because primarily because it gave us that fantastic saxophone solo performance at the White House with all the great saxophonists. That was fantastic. I mean, also welfare reform and his ability to work with, to work in a bipartisan manner
across the aisle.
Clinton was fantastic. And I'd say before that, probably Jimmy Carter. Not so much from a policy perspective, but because I think he was the greatest post-president that we ever have and that we've ever seen. What a man of grace and kindness and charity and caring he was. Absolutely.
And if you 100%. Had to go as far back as Grant, is there any Democrat Party?
No, because the Democrats were all racist assholes.
Okay.
No, the Democrats were the pro-slavery party. So no, I'm not going all the way back there. I don't have any favorites.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And the reason I mentioned this is because if, Republicans can go back to Lincoln, and I've argued that Democrats should at least, yes, Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, but he wasn't all bad, that there are Jeffersonian principles of small government that since he was a Democrat, they could go back to. So, just trying to give an olive branch to our friends out there that might be wondering about this. And folks, I'd like to open it up to the group here. We're talking about the DNC. We're talking about that video that came on, and also about David Hogg, or if there's other hot topics that Mark mentioned. Wesley, did you have your hand up earlier?
Yeah, I was just going to respond and say the DNC is going to run on open economic or class warfare. You've seen the fairly organic attendance at the Bernie AOC rallies. They're going to spin it as Trump gave tax break to his billionaire friends, and they're going to divide along those ideological lines because it's an emotionally appealing message to a lot of people. That's what they'll do.
Thank you for that, Wesley. Dean from Ohio?
Yeah, I'm still stuck on the riots and the fact that you bring law enforcement in, and that's the problem. You bring in the National Guard, and that's the problem. It's just the fact that Trump brought them in. It's unfortunate that anyone who's concerned. I'm still formulating this thought, but anyone who is concerned with collateral deportations, meaning ICE is going after criminals with illegal immigrants, and if these sanctuary cities, or LA, let's just focus on LA. If LA would just coordinate with ICE, not let everybody know where they're going to be, or, the minute that, somebody knows, send out a tweet. If they would do that, and local law enforcement would work with ICE, I just feel that there would be less collateral deportations. You wouldn't be aimed at anyone else. Well, the way they've got to go in if they find someone who is not or who is an illegal immigrant, what do you think they're going to do? We kind of got into this yesterday. I sympathize with folks that say, well, look, you said we were only going after the criminal element of this. It's being forced upon this group. It's being forced upon ICE to make this happen. And if they would have gone and collaborated, I think they would still have the riots, but they would be the local government and the federal government working together to get done what should have gotten done from the very beginning. I reserve the right to change that up a little bit, but I think if there was some coordination, some proper coordination, yeah, they're complaining about it now. Well, you're not coordinating with us. Well, yeah, every time we pick up the phone, one of your folks tweets it out or sends it out and puts federal agents in harm's way. So I hope that we can still find a way out of it. But grandma is that's the term I heard most. Grandma's being caught up in this. Well, it's your own darn fault that grandma's being caught up in this. Work with the federal government to minimize that collateral damage. Now, I don't see Daryl here. I would tend to be a little bit more on Daryl's side and say, look, they should all go. But let's be a little bit realistic of what was the mission, and let's do it safely, and then let's move to the next step.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dean. And I would like to point out on, it was Nino Rodriguez, Nino Boxer, he's a big YouTuber, and their discussion, one of his guests mentioned that a family of 21 that didn't have papers, the patriarch said, you know what, we're going to do this the right way. They packed up, they're back in Mexico, they're going to take the 2 or 3 years, right, to get everything straight. And what we don't understand in America is that folks have a deep network in Mexico and South America, a good network, right? And if this is happening, it's going to shake out. They're going to be a positive influence back where they are in Mexico. They're going to do things right. They're going to be back in America, and we're going to make progress in this country. Joshua from Virginia. Oh, sorry, Joshua, do I need to?
No, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, I couldn't bring up my thing. Thanks. Man, there's nothing I like more than seeing cars ablaze and Mexican flags being waved and ISIS flags being waved and Palestinian balaclavas being worn and graffiti all in the midst of these, just Gandhi-like peaceful sit-ins. I don't have much to say, but except that as much as I try to give people grace and the presumption of, just the presumption of good faith, man, when you go back and you look at the Black Lives Matter riots and you go back at, and what the media was calling the summer of love, and then these LA riots, man, when you go back and you look at those things and then you hear what Democrats are saying, it's really, I have to defy or suspend belief to think that the Democrats aren't inciting and continuing to fan the flames of these protests and riots and whip them into a frenzy and stir the pot for intentional political purposes. I would love for somebody to tell me that that's not what they're doing and tell me why, because that would make it easier for my heart. But they really don't care about these rioters or about any of this, other than to the extent that it's going to give them some political spin and ability to advance their political agenda.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joshua. Duke from North Carolina, how you doing this morning, Duke? Do I need to unmute you, sir?
There we go. Joshua, That's all they got. The worse they can make Trump, the more they can tear him down. And when you don't have any true policies, and I wish they did. We need a two-party system in the United States. We need two solid parties, each one to keep the other honest. But we don't have that right now. It's like I said, but going back to LA, the more they can make Trump bad, the more they, just like you said, they can enforce their policies or make that their policy that orange man bad.
And Duke, don't you find it a bit rich that it's these so-called sanctuary cities that stopped coordinating with the feds, and now they're saying, "Oh, the feds aren't coordinating with us." Well, it's like, didn't you guys start that?
It's just a freaking mess. I mean, and that's like I said, we need two parties. I want and keep looking for the Democrats to get some kind of footing, but
Duke, what do you think about my Thomas Jefferson tip? I know it goes too far back for some, but
no. I appreciate history as much as anyone, and while I'm not a great student of it, yeah, I appreciate the tip.
Okay, thank you, Duke. Jacqueline from SoCal.
I don't think Democrats are trying to get people to riot for their political purposes. I just think that they are trying to say what they think is politically convenient by minimizing the idea there's violence out there and sounding like they're in denial, to try to avoid upsetting anyone because people don't necessarily know what's happening or are in denial, or they think there's some kind of context missing, I guess.
And Jacqueline, can you tease out the waving of the Mexican flag? Because it's like, wait a minute, okay, you're in this country, you're waving the flag to resist going back to that country, and I get
Right.
something to do with Azatlan, you know?
It might have something to do with the Azatlan concept, where, especially in California, because California used to be Mexico. So because we are in what was, it could be.
But that game goes on forever, right? This land was someone's, and then it's like, but then there's treaties, right? So if we're gonna, I mean, it's essentially saying to unravel what, the Louisiana Purchase, or how far back do we have to go?
Well, I think California became a U.S. territory around 1848.
Okay. Joshua?
Thanks. Can you unpack that a little bit more, please, about why you think that the Democrats aren't fanning the flames?
I think they may be fanning the flames, but I don't think that's their intention. I think that they just want to spin it as it being like not what it is, and avoid, and they're trying to be divisive, but I don't think they actually want riots, because riots look bad.
So what's their intention?
Their
do you have
intention
an
is
idea of what their intention is?
Their intention is to put the attention on the deportations, because those are controversial with some California voters, and then they're trying to make it sound like the violence isn't happening by minimizing it, or sound like it's less of violence is happening.
And Jacqueline, Joshua may not have been here the other day when you mentioned that Anglos don't quite understand the issue with people not being here legally. Did I say that correctly, or do you maybe want to clarify that about the Anglos? Like, why don't they don't get it? Jacqueline?
Oh, why do I think that people are here legally?
No, that you said, I remember it was the other day about, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you agree that if people are not here with the correct papers, I mean, it's just, this is legal enforcement on one level, but that certain Anglos maybe don't get it, that there's like kind of a mental block there.
Oh, I was talking about something else. I was talking about how there's denial about how there's danger at the border, and that Mexicans acknowledge that more than people here do seem to.
Okay, that is the dynamic I want to draw out. So Mexicans acknowledge the danger at the border, where some Anglos, quote unquote, white people maybe are in denial of it. Okay, and that this would
danger.
What?
Danger at the border, as in like
The drug
danger.
trafficking. Like everyone knows
I
there's
don't
drug trafficking, but it's understated up here.
We're talking about the Dems,
Really?
like the Democratic Party, right? The whole liberal, like, you know,
Mindset.
being in the
Okay.
denial.
Okay, so liberal Anglos.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, because small government, right? The beauty of Trump and MAGA is that we're positive nationalists. We're here to make a better country. So there's no, I'm going to guilt you into this or that. I'm presenting a logical argument, right? And that's how I believe the small government mentality prospers. Where the all government mentality is, right? It's about like, oh, there's no border issue, and you know, it's a bit of
I was
it's
also
definitely-
trying to make the point that northern Mexico is more dangerous than other parts of Mexico, and that's something not really highlighted up here. And like and because of how we're near the crosshairs of the drug war, there's a lot more problems than people are realizing.
When
Dean,
Florida and Texas and some of the other border states started transporting illegals from across the border to the Northeast, to New York, to Chicago, that's when I think the let's just say folks with a liberal slant, where they said it's fine, it shouldn't be that, it's not that big a deal. I think that was one of the smartest things that governors did. They made it real for the rest of Americans, bringing those to their cities, to these sanctuary cities. Hey, it's easy to call yourself a sanctuary city when no one is beating down the doors to get in, and you get a couple of bus loads, and maybe it's more than that. I don't recall, but now, when it's now a financial crisis, I think this is what drives me nuts. This is not unknown, especially in California. I think no one likes Big Brother or the federal government coming in, but it is so clear to folks on the outside looking in. Someone said, look, you don't understand, in the main show, you don't understand the complexities of large cities. And I don't understand. I've got eyes to see. And I look at MSNBC, I look at Fox, I try to get a cross section of mainstream media to find out what's being said. It is just, whoever coined the term 80-20 issue, I just believe that there is a core group in the Democratic Party that believes, or is maybe not wishing for something to go wrong, but just you bring all these elements together in the city, someone's going to pull a gun, similar to Kent State 50 years ago, to where there's somebody gets shot, and then political will for deportations will begin to wane, and support for the left will begin to grow. That's just a lousy way to support your policies. So I hope it doesn't come to that. And to the ones that say, well, there's nothing to see here in LA, the riots aren't that bad. I believe they're not that bad because swift action was taken. The National Guard was federalized. Marines were brought in, right or wrong. And it basically gave cover to law enforcement in LA that normally has their hands tied. At least this is just my opinion, to where the government wasn't saying, hey, just lay off of this, just let them go, just let them run out of gas. And now the law enforcement, I love law enforcement. My father-in-law's a police officer, was a police officer, and it is so important for a good society. And I'm hoping that nothing bad happens. But again, I wouldn't be surprised.
Thank you, Dean. And we're going to go ahead, Joshua.
Sorry, having worked in local government, granted not not a huge, massive, second largest city in the country, local government. I will say local politics are largely unknown in the outside the cities, and they can be dramatically different, and usually are dramatically different than federal and state level politics, just simply because the powers of local governments are different than state powers and federal powers, and that also varies within states. However, I'm still sort of maybe not getting it with the idea that okay, are we saying that white liberals are willfully ignorant, or are ignoring
Yes, let me give you
border violence?
Yes, the example I'll give you, Joshua, is without being too specific, right? Friend of a friend type of thing, right? Getting to his neighborhood, his car got totaled by an illegal, right? High on heroin, some carpenter leaving a job, dozed off, boom, smashed him. No one was hurt, but cars got totaled, right? So you would think after that experience, no insurance there, no papers, nothing. And my friend was just like, what the hell, right? Because all our life we're used to dealing with the system, right? There's an insurance, or there's the police and some processing. In this case, the guy had no papers. I asked my friend, why did you call the cops? He said, for what? I said, dude, the guy was on heroin, whatever. So he tried tracking him down, his wife, and then they're all gone. I mean, like, no good, no luck, okay? So instead of that shaping his experience, like, man, there really is an issue if people don't have papers, right? I get from him about some story, some book his sister's given him about an academic decathlon team from here that went to Canada, and one of the students, turns out, was undocumented, and he got held up at the border. And oh my goodness. And I'm like, okay, but your car got totaled, But it's so which story, right? Like the personal injury is prevailing, or this, oh, something happened to someone out there. But am I describing quote unquote white guilt correctly? Or am I losing you on that?
Oh no, I'm right there. My face my face is in reaction to your friend.
And it's not even a white guilt, because brown guilt, I guess if you want to call it that. We have family friends assaulted 8-9 p.m. very nice neighborhood. Again, so I'm on the flip side. We're like, please send in the Marines. Please send in the Marines.
Semper Fi. And so again, I use the phrase willful ignorance because I started out this conversation by talking about intent. Well, willfulness is intent, right? It's an intent. Willful ignorance is an intent to remain ignorant, right? And again, I'm still not convinced that the Democrats, as a large group, as a party, right? I'm still not convinced that they don't have an intent to ignore the real issues of illegal immigration, the real issues of violence and gang activity in Mexico and in Central America, and that's God. Is it evil? Is evil the correct word? It's certainly despicable intent, and not worthy of an enlightened society, enlightened with a capital E. And USMC from 2005 to 2010, right here. 0331, baby.
Thank you for that, Joshua.
You got a lot of Marines. You got a lot of Marines on the call today.
Excellent. That's how we like it. I'm going to bring in Kelly, and then we'll get to Claudio from Italy. And Kelly, if you could remind the viewers where you're chiming in from.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kelly. I'm from Rochester. Well, originally Buffalo, but Rochester, which is upstate New York.
Okay.
And my other Zoom account signed in. I don't know. I'm having a bunch of problems with the Zoom accounts. I don't want to change the topic. It is related to immigration, but I was primarily a finance major in college, but I had some extra time, so I minored in political science. And I had a professor, and I'll never forget, we were talking about immigration. And I went back and looked at like one of the books, and when we like talk about immigration as a whole, and you look back at the founders' take and everything, they were pro immigration, obviously, right? But there was one major catch that like if you immigrated here, you had to assimilate to our culture and our ways, and you could never have a conflicting interest, right? Because I mean, when you think about it, like the revolution, we left England, and all the people that were like, they considered you a traitor if you were still still followed the king. And so when we talk about immigration too, I think sometimes there's just like a part of the conversation that's missed. It's like we kind of got away from like, if you come here from another place, like first of all, nobody has a right to immigrate wherever they want, right? Well, and then, but like if you come into not even ours, if you come into someone else's society, I think it's a completely reasonable expectation that you follow the rules that are there, right? And so sometimes I feel like even on the general conversation of immigration, we're not high enough.
Yes, I agree. We need to apply the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Claudio from Italy.
No, yeah, we were discussing about that with Luke on our group, and what I noticed is that the people were saying there were spontaneous riots, there were people that didn't know what we were doing. Instead, when you go to see all the interview, other things, you see people with their own smug telling, no, but we want to keep ourselves illegals because we hate the capitalist mentality of America. We are anti-capitalist. We want social. After you say that, you watch people like the correspondent of the Chicago 7. Why you can't send the Marines, which is a correspondent of the Army, and federalize the National Guard to kill these people? I mean, we have to keep these people because an elite of the Democratic Party decided that they want to die on that hill, and rather than make a real visa reform with some, as they are called by some Democrats, pragmatic, suburban, conservative visa reform, we have to keep these people. It's like that in Italy when we have rich people from the left that they want to keep illegals, and we say, put you the money to let these people assimilate. Say, no, we can do that. It should be doing by the state. But the state doesn't have money to do that. No, but the state should do it. We will tax someone. Sure.
Yeah.
As always, a problem that is related with criminality, related also with welfare, and to think that spend more money on the problem will solve the problem.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to say, Claudia, so on your point, you put up the money. So my aunts both married foreigners, and it was during one was from Brazil, and it was like, so before he could come, because they had a child in Brazil and things were bad in like inflation, everything in the late 80s. And so he's like, okay, I want to immigrate to America. But, he did it the right way. And one of the things was my grandparents had to put up cash, and they had to sign and agree. And he had to agree, I will not use welfare. Like you had to prove, and he went through like the whole process, and he had to prove, and he had to take like a citizenship test. And I feel like now we've gotten so far from there.
Wesley, if you could remind the viewers where you're chiming in from.
I'm chiming in from Michigan, the Thumb area in Lapeer County. So, yeah, I was in the Marine Corps, and I saw what you posted there, Dean, and the Brigadier General has a point. I mean, Marines are trained. I used to say that we were trained in the extraordinarily efficient eradication of human life, but we we all rose our hands and we swore our oath to office, which was to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But we were trained primarily for warfare, right? Not crowd management, not dispersing crowds. Do I think Marines are capable of being trained that way quickly and efficiently, yes. So I would push back a little bit and say, look, you can cross-train the Marines. You can use them to defend a property without lethal force, and they would be good to have there. That would be my view. There's like, yeah, we should use the military, when needed, but only when needed.
Yes, and this is for the YouTube audience out there. We're asking the group how Marines on our call feel about Marines being sent to Los Angeles. Joshua from Virginia.
Yeah, thanks. And I think it's also good to point out that all the Marines on this call were in during different times and different, in different sort of priorities of, Marine Corps training. I think I'm the only Marine in here who's a War on Terror Marine from 2005 to 2010. And so, yes, Marine Corps infantry mission is to, what is it? Engage, close with, and, destroy the enemy with superior fire and maneuver. Okay. Yes. However, during the War on Terror, which lasted 20 plus years, after the initial invasion of Iraq, and this was primarily in Iraq that we saw this amount of training and this doctrine. The doctrine was counterinsurgency, and a lot of the actions weren't your typical fire and maneuver actions. It was controlling entry points into and out of specific locations or specific cities in Iraq, sort of like weeding out insurgents who were covert in a place, and sort of in a sense it was sort of a peacekeeping mission towards the end. Well, probably for the bulk of the deployment in Iraq, it was peacekeeping missions. So I think there's a lot of training that, as I said in the chat, I think there's a lot of non-lethal training that has been done and has been sort of adopted by the Marine Corps. And again, we also have Marine Corps Security Forces. Marine Corps Security Forces is tasked with, we colloquially in the Marines, we all just say, yeah, security guard duty, right? Well, I mean, they protect our embassies, right? Every Marine you see as a Marine detachment at an embassy is, Security Forces Marine. You've got the Security Forces fast companies, which are there for, ostensibly there for hostage rescue and embassy takeover duty. So again, yeah, no, I don't like Marine deployment. I do not like domestic Marine deployment. But I don't, and again, to Professor Kinney's point, particularly if it's a political ploy, right? Like, I don't like that. I remember the Bruce Willis, Denzel Washington movie, The Siege. Anybody else remember that movie?
Oh, great film.
Line.
Add
right?
that to the list.
Great line in there when Bruce Willis is like, this is it, right?
Once you turn it over, there's no going back.
There's no going back. He's like, the military is a broadsword, not a scalpel. Okay, like, great movie. But look, it's happened before. It happened before. To guard the the students during reintegration, or during integration. It happened with the Rodney King riots. As long as they're there in a guard duty capacity for federal property, et cetera, then I think they'll be fine. I've known a lot of Marines in my day, and I've seen a lot of Marines get into some sticky situations. Nobody's looking to give people PTSD, right? Like, nobody's out there. No commanders are out there. Some commanders are out there, the cowboys and the sheriffs, so to speak. But nobody's out there trying to fire on American citizens, right? Nobody's out there trying to fire on American citizens. Marines are going to defend themselves, within their rules of engagement. I think they're going to be given non-lethal rules of engagement. And I don't know. I don't anticipate that it escalates. And I don't anticipate that Marines are going to be essentially going forward deployed to quell riots. They're going to be there on guard duty.
Let's bring in I was going to say our fellow Marine. I'm not a Marine, but let's bring in another Marine, Professor Kenny. And Professor Kenny, where are you chiming in from today?
I'm in Lincoln Park, New Jersey.
NJ. All right.
Okay, so I'm with Josh. But the thing what people have to understand about the Marine Corps, what our ethos is, we're there to kick your ass. We're not there to, there's a term in the Marine Corps called hurry up and wait. And that really pisses us off, and because they always want you to be ready to go. And then they get you all fired up and ready to go, and then you got to stand there and wait around, and then that just builds, the anger and the juices to get going. So I think, I don't like this. This is a political ploy, but what I also think, though, if I can think this way about Trump when it comes to this, at least he's ahead of it. They always call in the National Guard, or they're going to need the Marines to come in when it turns into a shit show. He's ahead of it now. And Josh is 100% right. They're not there to engage the public and beat them back and whatever. They're there to just surround federal property and protect it. It's a show of presence. And the imagery is going to be great if you show Marines standing around in formation and you got these Mexican flag bearers throwing rocks and batteries at them. That just plays into the what Trump wants and what the right wants. So it's an interesting. Plus, I'd like to get to what they need to do when these situations is get to the bottom of who is responsible for these organized quote unquote protests / riots. Who's supplying the bricks? Who's supplying? That's what they really need to get to the bottom of. To expose the fraudulentness of this stuff. And Newsom's weak, Karen Bass is weak. I just think that where Trump politically outsmarted everybody, he got ahead of it, and he can, as long as the Marines and the National Guard don't shoot anybody and don't kill anybody, that goes so far in selling your narrative as, look, I brought these people in, and they did their job. Nobody got killed. We completed our mission, and you people had your own police force get attacked by these crazy illegals or whatever you want to call them. So it's just, like I said, I talked about this. Yes, it's political science 101. But I just to reemphasize, I'm not a big fan of sending the Marines in for this kind of thing.
Real quick, Kenny, let me respond real quick. So I agree with you. And I think Trump is just posturing to get ahead of it, right? And I'm not a big fan of it either. But it's going to come down to who has more resolve, because there's already a June 16th national protest, planned. I don't know if you saw that. Did you see that? So it's beginning to escalate on their side. And now what do you do if this starts happening in multiple cities and we have 2020 again? That's my concern. And then the media is going to, the dominant media, what Mark calls it, but mainstream media is going to continue to beat that drum to try to make it look, they're going to drive the narrative that Trump escalated and that's why we have the riots.
Well, let me bring this up real quick. I just respond to you. What if this is really thought out, real well thought out, and what happens is you see that they're complaining that the National Guard and the Marines are there, right? So now we're going to go to June 16th, and let's say Trump doesn't send in the Marines and the National Guard, and it goes to shit because he says, well, you guys complained that we had the National Guard and the Marines in there, and, what do you want from me? And then so it's, and plus these protests never happen on in red states. You know what I mean? So we'll see how it goes.
Yep.
Thank you for that, Professor Kenny. Claudio from Italy.
Yeah, I want also to add another thing related with the border that was telling Kelly, that first of all, when people confound the founders' time for an open border period, they don't understand that at the time there were not many people so resourceful to be able to do a travel to go in America without any issue. And the second thing is that when, for example, the Democrats or the libertarians talks about things like Ellis Island, we are talking about a moment in the American history where in the ports of entry you could have stayed 4 months, 5 months, 6 months because of quarantine or other reasons before to enter the country. So it would not be different from what is called, honestly, by the people, a gated border. I mean, a gate can both open and can both close. It's not just to enter, it's also to make people go out to protect themselves. And think what these people want is a gated border, a place where it's easy enter, but it's also easy to make people go out, to make it easy people to make stay where we should. And in general, regarding the protest or other things, I agree with Professor Kenny that at a certain point, it will not be the Marines that we decide, but we should be the governors. And we will see what certain blue governor will do and what a certain red governor will do. And for me, it's stupefying to notice that the places where there are the far-right militias are also the places where there are the far-left militia. In places where there are Republicans or other people, you don't have this kind of problem. Let's be honest. We can have problem like voter suppression of that kind of stuff, but we don't have problem of extremism like in other places. Let's be honest. I see that the extremism most of the time is in blue states.
Thank you, Claudio. And I'd like to share this. I got permission from Jacqueline, just so people understand the California perspective, right? I just trust the Marines to be more even-handed than ICE because Marines sacrifice more of their line of work, so they're more likely to be role models. I generally think the military service members are more likely to have good character and humility than law enforcement because so many police types come off as snobby from being in a powerful male-dominated line of work. And so I think it also has to do with what's going on in California it's not just a year or 2 years. This has been building up for maybe over a decade, right? The San Jose Police Chief Union, she was caught drug running, right? There's a lot of things going on that the news it doesn't bubble up from California. So just so folks from the outside understand, like for me, right, I go, you guys are saying the Marines are coming to domestic? No. This is California. We're occupied, so we need to be liberated. Joshua, please, from Virginia.
Thanks. I echo that sentiment to a certain extent. Police, there's a different amount of kinetic activity that you have between police and military, and there's drastically more kinetic activity that happens in policing than does in the military, right? In warfare, the kinetic activity tends to come in literal bursts. and it's final, right? Like it's just final activity. But policing is in the community, and they do it every day. I wonder, I wonder if it would be more escalatory for the LAPD to show up with SWAT, with riot shields, with the tear gas, etc., than actually for National Guard and for Marines to be deployed. I don't know. Maybe that's a different.
Well,
take.
that's in the perfect world, right? Not in this situation in California. Professor Kenny?
I do think there's a danger for Trump to get bogged down in this, like have this summer of protests, and that you don't want to go there. You don't want to go there. So I'm just wondering is how far they've thought this out. You know, I know Trump 2.0 is a lot more smarter than Trump 1.0. And I know President Stephen Miller is on top of his game, and I know he thinks these things through. So, but you know what? You can't measure people's emotions and how they start to affect people. So you know, the bottom line is this could be a danger for Trump's presidency if they don't play this right. And I think Dean brought it up, or somebody brought it up there. And yes, if God forbid Marines or National Guardsmen kill like we have at Kent State again, you know, then now you're really in big trouble with the issue. You know, what they need to do is just keep harping on the criminal illegal element and keep marching them out in front of the legacy media every day, you know. So
Thank you for that, Professor Kenny. And how do you address the people that say about I feel like it's like Trump, oh, he's not doing enough, and then he's not surgical enough, but it's like this is how it works, right?
it's very hard. This is a very hard deal. Right now, this is all show. And he's won the political fight so far. I mean, the most ridiculous thing I saw was two ridiculous things. Was Newsom going, "Come on and arrest me." I mean, he looks so ridiculous. I mean, that just dropped him like, you know, from maybe the teens in voting to in the single digits. And then Karen Bass, when she goes, I I don't know. Is he trying to make an example out of us? Oh, you just figured that out, huh? It's just like so stupid. But yeah, this is and plus here's the thing. I wonder really how powerful or how strong or how committed, and I think Wesley you brought this up, but how committed the protesters are. You know what I mean? Are they really committed to, you know, illegal aliens being in this country and they're willing to throw rocks at police all summer and stuff for that, you know, and be against ICE and, you know, ICE are just agents doing their job. They're federal employees trying to do their job. So I wonder how committed they are, you know, and who's willing to fund them to keep them committed.
Rent a riot, rent a riot. Joshua Johnson?
Professor Kenny just jogged my mind about something I was thinking about this morning. And you know, I remember the Arab Spring. I had just gotten out of active duty, and I remember the Arab Spring. I was sitting in an international relations class at University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and we were talking about the Arab Spring, and one of the students in that class, and I was older than everybody else in the class, just simply because of, you know, the gap that I had in with my military service. But one of the people in that class responded to videos of the riots in Tahrir Square, okay, in Egypt, and he said, "Man, that looks like a lot of fun." Flashbulb memory for me, right? It's flashbulb memory for me. And maybe I'm extrapolating too much, right? But I don't think I am. I think the young people who are involved in these riots, particularly the young leftists, because that's all they are, right? Young right-wing folks don't go out and riot, right? Like right conservative politics is law and order based. It's not riot based. It's not revolutionary. The young people that are involved in these riots, they're passionate because of emotions, because of hormones, because of not fully formed, prefrontal cortexes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Same reason why we want 18-year-old men, in the Marine Corps. Okay. Same reason, different agenda. They're passionate. They're inexperienced at life, and they think it's fun. Okay. Like they think it's fun. They have an umbrella to let out, almost like the Purge. Okay. They have an umbrella, a shield, to let out to let out all their base emotions, to go out there for, ostensibly some cause that they tangentially agree with, and they're always being controlled, whether they know it or not. They are being controlled and manipulated by the people who are older and who have a political agenda that whip up these riots and call them peaceful and encourage people to protest, just like that, that Los Angeles assemblywoman who was out there saying, we'll go out there and force blah, 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 blah. Right. But man, Professor Kinney hit the nail on the head there. And I think, it's because they think it's fun.
Yes, and personal experience, when I was the Marxist Atheist Union organizer, Whittier Hospital, we sat around the conference room. We were doing some event for workers, and I was talking to Nick, who was the lead on the campaign, and Nick was talking about how, in New England on the Yale Hospital, whatever campaign it was, workers were going to cross the picket line. Some leader was going to cross the picket line, and Pickus, the head of SEIU 1199, said, "You know what you need to do, Nick?" Nick said, "I know." So he took his bat and he bashed in the headlights of the worker's car to send the message. And we're listening to this like, wow, when do we get to do that sort of violence? Brainwashed, that's what we were. I'm going to call on Daryl because he has his hand raised in the chat, and then Ribbon.
Yeah, I don't know. The now you guys made me a host. The button to raise my hand is gone, and I went through all the menus. I'm like, how do I raise my hand?
React. You have to click on the react, and then it's a thing and a thing and a thing and the other thing. But
yeah, I don't know. It's my first time ever being a host. I'm not Zoom.
We did it on
doing
purpose.
Great. You're doing great,
Daryl. Purpose, so we don't have to hear from you, Daryl.
I now see. I have a feeling that's more likely. Well, I just wanted to bring up something I just saw on the Twitterverse. The FBI just arrested a third Chinese national who was smuggling biological materials into the University of Michigan. So
awesome.
Something going on. First of all, at the University of Michigan, and third, yeah, that's right. I think Luke just posted Ringworm, or whoever just posted that. Very frightening, and I'm glad the FBI seems to be focusing in on this because China's up to something.
Cash Patel.
And if you guys don't mind dropping those links in the Zoom chat, and also you've seen, I've been putting in a link. You can make the Zoom chat permanent. This will help us up the dialogue, right? So we can keep this information flowing. Ribbon, if you could remind the viewers where you're chiming in from. Texas, I believe. Unmute. Do I need to unmute you? Unmute. Ribbon, are you there? Might be the phone issue. She's trying to unmute from her phone. Okay, we'll give Ribbon a chance to figure those things out. My phone is beeping left and right. And I've got Shamsul from Malaysia going, why is there an issue at all, right? It's like the crime is being, dealt with here. Let it unfold. Ribbon, can you, how do we help her out here? Say something in the chat.
I mean, we have the power to activate the audio, but if we don't know what he's doing, we cannot activate the audio without his consent.
Professor Kenny?
Yeah, what I was going to say is, instead of having these National Guardsmen and Marines, the old school way, and of course we're not up to it in today's world, but the old school way, if you remember when the Columbia University students in the late 60s were doing their thing, it was like 69, or when Nixon was running for president, 68, 69, when Columbia University was starting their protests, what happened? The hard hats went down and beat the hell out of them. So, it's just because the immigration issue falls on the right in terms of favor, how it's being handled, right? The favorability is in there. high 50s or whatever it is, as opposed to the left, you know, those are the people who need to come out and protest against those protesters. You know, that's really what needs to happen, instead of just sitting back and letting Trump try and dictate everything with military deployment.
Thank you for that, Professor Kenny. Claudio?
I want to add a little detail using the European experience. At our time, also they were putting undercover agents to know where were the main organizers of this protest, to know the source of the protest, because sometimes, as I said, they were sold as a spontaneous order, and then you will discover that will come from the Communist Party or people directly had a finance from Labour Party England or the other kind of stuff. I would also suggest to the police, like in the old school, put a not secret agent, but undercover agent to understand who pays these people or which are the real reason why these people do the protest. Because most of the time it's that you have to see if how much the ploy is political. Yeah, of course it can be also Soros, but we should not go straight to the source. We want also to know the middlemen, because if you cut the source, then middlemen will find other sources. But I agree with you, Professor.
Thank you for that, Claudio. Folks, I think we're going to wrap up here, and then people can hang out with us on Zoom off the live. So give me 1 second here. And I sent Ribbon a message, so maybe she just got tied up here. We'll sort that out off the live. Okay, here we go.
Sorry if we cut anyone off, but that's a wrap. Remember, you can catch us live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. It's your chance to join the conversation and have your voice heard. Just check the link in the description or visit americastalk.show. Together, through the free exchange of ideas, we can truly make America great again. Don't miss out. Tune in and be part of the dialogue.